Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Realizing Rural. Today we have the honor of sitting down with a true advocate of both rural communities and someone who is really at the intersection of both government and commerce. A man whose journey has taken him from the heart of Barnwell, rural South Carolina, to the halls of power and economic influence. And to me, it's really nothing short of inspiring. Our guest today is none other than a good friend of mine, Mike Jackson, a name that really in Barnwell would resonate as someone who has really taken his grassroots beginnings and worked tirelessly to make progress throughout his career. Today, he will take us through his upbringing and then also talk about his current role as at the South Carolina Port Authority. And so, Mike, we're really happy to have you here today.
It's an honor to be on today, and I greatly appreciate the invite. I think as we mentioned in our previous conversation, man, greatly appreciate what you do in Barnwell. I can't say that enough, and so just thankful to be invited on today, man.
Yeah, well, thank you. I know you're really busy, so appreciate you taking the time to be here. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. Tell everybody listening just a little bit about kind of your background, being from Barnwell. I know you're a proud Warhorse graduate, so just give us a little bit about growing up in Barnwell and then kind of what led you to where you are today.
That's good question. I'd love to walk through that. So, born and raised in Barnwell, South Carolina, entire family, born and raised. I wouldn't have it any other way. Barnwell's a special place. Went to Barnwell High School. Proud Warhorse. Played baseball, football, and basketball there. My whole life growing up, and then went on to USC Salkehatchie after graduating from Barnwell to play baseball. Did that for 2 years, and then went on to Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where I continued my baseball career there and graduated with a business degree. Upon graduating, I moved back to Columbia, where my wife Hillary was living in Columbia. She went to USC. She was working as a nurse, so I moved back and started my career at Enterprise Rental, which at the time I didn't realize the skill sets that I was getting at Enterprise. It truly taught me how to be a professional, and taught me you get overworked and underpaid, and kind of taught grit, and some of those things that I learned is still carrying on with me today. So left Enterprise, got the opportunity to work in higher education as a director of admissions at South University in Columbia. During that time, I was going in the evenings to get my grad degree. I was leaving work and going to night classes for a couple years and finished that up. And it's ironic, kind of how I stumbled into state government. I had a professor who I'm still close with today, who was a director at the Commission on Higher Education. She ran the Student Services Division, still does, Dr. Karen Woodfall. Amazing person, does a lot for our state. She presented an opportunity to work at the Commission on Higher Education in their Gear Up program. And what that program did is provided academic support services for students all throughout the state, total 3,000 students in 22 middle schools and high schools and some of the most underrepresented areas in the state. So I started state government there. And then we didn't get the grant my last year there. So Brian Gaines, who's also from Barnwell and just appointed Comptroller General of the state, kept in contact with him, mentor of mine, and the job in the South Carolina House of Representatives in the Ways and Means Committee job came across his desk, and he shared it with me and said, "Hey, this may be an opportunity, a good opportunity to take a look at it." Initially, I was like, not really a numbers guy. I don't, it's a budget analyst, really not my thing. But then I kind of dug into it and talked to some folks familiar with it, and they explained that it's really more important to be able to cultivate relationships. So took on that opportunity and truly provided just a foundation in the political space. For those you don't know, the Ways and Means Committee is the state's appropriations committee. So there's two appropriations committees in the state: House Ways and Means and Senate Finance. So you have staffers working in certain sections of the budget. In my case, I worked in transportation and regulatory and then economic development, where I truly kind of got to take a deep dive in state agencies' requests, what they needed to continue to function. So spent a number of years there, got to build some meaningful relationships with elected officials on both sides of the aisle. And it was just such a great experience for me. Um, so as a result of that, the state ports authorities budget came through the subcommittee that I staffed. So I really got to dig into the ports budget and their needs, and truly got an understanding of the economic impact that they make in the state. And you think about it, responsible for 1 in 10 jobs, $60 billion economic impact, and just a multi-footprint terminal throughout the state. So started with the port. I work in their governmental affairs department, and going on my third legislative session with the port. And I spent 4 legislative sessions with House Ways and Means.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You talk about those
Yep.
relationships that you develop over time. I think, as you know, I was had the privilege of going down to the South Carolina Association of Counties conference in the Isle of Palm at Wild Dunes this past week, and shout out to the staff there at the Association of Counties. They do a great job. Tim Winslow, Josh Rhodes, those guys do an excellent job with the training and also the advocacy. And while I was there, I was fortunate to run into a lot of different people. President of the Senate, Thomas Alexander, was there. Senator Brad Hutto, Minority Leader, was there. Representative David Weeks was there. The legislative team, Owen McBride, John Winges, a lot of people there, and your name came up a lot. And it made me very proud as a Barnwell guy to every time that your name was mentioned or the port was mentioned, it was a positive reaction, and just those relationships that you've been able to cultivate over the years. And I know that they're far more widespread than even those few people, but it was awesome to see how well respected you are in that community and how fast you've been able to kind of cultivate those relationships. So that made me really proud, man.
You guys are great, man. All the names you mentioned, just fortunate just to be able to work with those folks, man. And I think they give me a little bit more credit than I deserve. But everyone that you name does a tremendous job for our state. I mean, on down to President Alexander. I mean, what he does for our state is just truly amazing. And I'm just thankful to even be able to be in the same space.
That's great. Well, so what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit. I want to drill down a little bit about the port because I think that's important. I want people to understand a little bit more about the port, kind of what you're doing there, what kind of things are going on at the port, and then also talk about some of the economic stuff related to that, and then we'll tie it back to the rural kind of Barnwell side at the end. Okay. So as you've kind of been getting into this role at the port, obviously the port plays a huge role in economic development. Can you touch on a few brief ways, but can you kind of dive into some of those ways that the port influences economic growth in South Carolina as a whole?
Absolutely, man. Funny you mentioned that. We're actually in the process of updating our economic impact study, where we do that every 5 years. And truly, when you look at it, the port impacts every segment of the state. And I think, oftentimes people think, when they think of the port, they think of just Port of Charleston, when really, a large percentage of the impact is in upstate. Um, we have 2 inland ports, Inland Port Greer, which the anchor tenant being BMW, and then Inland Port Dillon, anchor tenant being Harbor Freight. But truly, I mean, when companies are looking to locate to South Carolina, having a port available is a huge benefit on how they move their goods in and out of the state. And to speak a little bit on the inland ports, um, we just expanded the Inland Port Greer facility 10 years. That facility has been up and running, and I don't think anybody anticipated that we would experience the level of growth that we've had in 10 years. The expansion is going to double capacity there. And basically what it does, it provides a direct line of rail to the Port of Charleston. So what does that mean? You're keeping trucks off the road. Everybody likes trucks off the road, and you're able to have a far reach, even extending outside of South Carolina, that provides a direct connection to the Port of Charleston. When you look at all these announcements that come to the state, the port's always in the conversation, and we're always at the table because folks want to see how can the port support businesses coming into the state. When we're looking at from an infrastructure side, what we do is we build infrastructure and attract companies to come here. And when you look at building infrastructure, I mean, you're thinking 30, 40 years. You rarely look at something on a 5-year window. It's how is this going to increase capacity 20, 30 years down the road? And it truly takes kind of starting those conversations early on. We've been very fortunate to have support from the General Assembly and the governor. That's been tremendous in everything that we do. I think everybody in Columbia and in DC understands the role that the port plays in the state. So having that support has been critical for us. Just last year, we received funding to build the Navy Base Intermodal Facility, which is a near dock facility that's going to allow ships to have rail on the dock, which will also take trucks off the road. Hugh Leatherman Terminal, phase one of that. So there's a lot of infrastructure that we're building, but in the port business, you have to continue to build infrastructure because that's the only way you have the competitive advantage. And, when you look at our customers, the shipping lines, they have floating assets. So they're going to go to what port can handle their volume. So we've always got to try to make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve and building infrastructure for the future, which will allow us to continue to grow cargo coming through the port.
And so just for our listeners, so the inland port, correct me if I'm wrong, so an inland port is basically a in Dillon and then in the upstate there, it's a direct rail line to an inland kind of area where cargo containers can be offloaded in Charleston, and then it's a direct rail line up there that keeps trucks off the roads, and it really gives kind of people a direct line to the port, correct? Yeah. And then the
Yep.
other thing to it on the port side is what's important if I'm a cargo container shipping company and I'm trying to choose what port to use. What are your customers that are coming in and out of the Port of Charleston? What are they looking for? Is it depth? Is it width of the channel? What are they looking for?
I think that's probably the number one thing they're looking for, which leads into, we just deepened the harbor to 52 feet. So that's the deepest on the East Coast, which allows us to be able to handle any ship, which is critical, right? When because ships are getting bigger, so the folks that can handle the ships are usually who the ships are calling on. So with the completion of the Harbor Deepening Project, and that was thanks to the state of South Carolina and our congressional delegation to help with funding in that, now we're able to take on all the mega ships. So when ships are making decisions, because it's about money for them, right? They want to know how they can get the most cargo in and get out quickly. So having the deepest harbor on the East Coast is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, that's everything you read in the paper and everything I've kind of studied about the port. The depth of the depth is certainly huge as you start talking about these larger and larger ships coming in, because these companies are wanting to put more and more containers on going in and going out both, so they can the more they can carry, the better, and more profitable they can be. So yep. So let's circle back to Barnwell, which and I know it's kind of near and dear to your heart. You live now down in Mount Pleasant, right? So population 2021, I looked it up earlier, 92,000, right at 93,000 people. Okay. Charleston, that's a part of Charleston County. So Charleston County, 400,000 people. All right. You came from Barnwell County, 20,000 people. What do you miss? What do you miss most about? What do you miss most about Barnwell County?
Just a sense of just like the community there, man. Like you just like you feel like you're home, and everybody's connected and everybody just seems to want to look out for everybody, man. And yeah, I was on Facebook the other day and I was looking at some folks that I graduate with in high school and how their kids are going through school and some of the same teachers are there, and it you can't get that anywhere else. I mean, we love Mount Pleasant, but Barnwell always has a special place for us in our heart, man. Because going home, we've been gone for a long time, but it just still feels like home, and you can't replicate that in a big city. That is a small town. Everybody's looking after everybody mentality, and we do miss that.
Yeah, and when I was at school and came back, and then even now living here, having people like yourself and other friends that come back, it's amazing how it's almost like you never left off when you get back. So when you come back, as as you were kind of at the state house and doing a lot of work up there, you did a lot of economic development. You were involved in the budget process of economic development, so you kind of had your hands in that. So I know you bring a unique perspective as somebody who grew up here but then now lives away, but still kind of connected and interested in what's going on here. On our last episode, we talked to the new chamber CEO, Bob Sneed, and one of the things we talked to him about was the Aiken Augusta kind of area, the CSRA, and the growth around the Aiken kind of area, and people living over there, and then trying to, as Barnwell County and Allendale County, trying to figure out a way to get people to live here. So, from your perspective, what are some things that we could be doing to try to drive some of that growth, specifically some of the housing initiatives this way?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, man. That's something I think about all the time. Anytime there's opportunity for, you know, any type of growth or prosperity in Barnwell that comes my way, I always try to filter it to folks that would be interested. But, you know, it, my wife and I, we talk about this. If we could live in Barnwell and have the quality of life we have now, we would do it, like no question. Um, I think what particularly what you're doing and other folks on councils doing with trying to promote economic development and get companies to come there and sell Barnwell, and I think it's gonna take a, a large amount of energy and effort, and everybody singing from the same tune for that movement to happen. Because there's opportunities for rural counties to do well. We just got to make sure we're tapping in the resources that's available for rural counties, and just being aware of what they are. I think a lot of times, there's resources there. We're not we're not privy to them, so we're not taking advantage of them. Um, so having knowledge of people that are knowledgeable about what's available, and then actually understanding how to access those resources, and if you can't directly access them, who are the people that can help you connect those dots? And that's the relationship part. Kind of knowing the people at the state house and on the federal level that can help kind of get those resources to Barnwell. And again, I can't overstate this, credit to yourself. I've watched, and you've done that and continue to do that. And so it gives me hope, that we can turn back to the Barnwell that it used to be, that I grew up and still's in me today. And a huge part of what I'm doing in my role is a result of my upbringing in Barnwell.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, those relationships are key, and the access to those resources. I'm thankful. We've talked about it on previous episodes as well, but I'm thankful for a lot of the broadband. To me, the broadband was a huge initiative, both federally and at the state, with Nanette and her team there at the at the ORS and the broadband office with Jim. And so what they're doing all across the state in these rural areas is really unbelievable, and it's necessary. And a lot of people would say, well, it should have been done years ago, but the amount of effort and time and energy that they've put into this, and the speed at which they've been able to deploy these assets, I think is a big credit to the General Assembly and everybody working up there, because the broadband is going to be a game changer, continues to be a game changer for rural areas all across the country, but specifically here in South Carolina.
Spot on. And I was fortunate to have the opportunity to work with Annette Edwards and Office of Regulatory Staff and Jim, to dealing with the broadband, when we got funds from the CARES Act. And we're getting so much federal funding, and if you don't have the net or Jim to deploy those funds, we're not making leeway like we're doing now. So kudos to them, and they play an important role in deployment of those funds, and understanding how we can serve underserved areas. So I'm optimistic, and that you know, the future is going to be different in regards to broadband and internet in rural areas.
And then when you talk about the quality of life, what are some of the things that come to mind when you say quality of life? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, having industry there, that multiple industries there that can provide a great quality of living, a good paycheck. I mean, obviously we've had Savannah Riverside there for a long time that has, gosh, I mean, provided such a good living for a lot of people there. Very fortunate. But we need more companies like that, right? Because what happens is folks don't know what they don't know, right? And you get a job making a good living, that changes the trajectory of a family, right? So then now, you have the resources to be able to provide experiences to your kids, and I truly believe if you can't provide those experiences, which generally costs money, it's hard for a kid to think outside of what they see. And the more, and that's directly related to earning a good wage, right? And Barnwell has those opportunities, so I don't want to be mistaken there. But um, the more of those companies that we can get to Barnwell, the more that folks are going to be able to make a good living, which then trickles down to their kids, and then that continues to lift Barnwell up. But without industry, it's difficult. It's difficult for people to get out of the rut. It's
Yeah,
hard.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that we're working on right now is housing, right? If locally, if you did want to move back, then the inventory right now is very, very limited. And as you start talking about, people would love to have more restaurants and this and that. Well, the reality is the retail looks at rooftops, right? That's the saying that everybody always, that's kind of the reality of how it works. So being able to try to get people to live here once they take those jobs is important. And I think the broadband, some of the stuff that's been done at the YMCA, some of the quality of life is parks, things like that Mount Pleasant has. And I think we're trying to add here is really, really, really important. Um, it, Go ahead.
You know, I've always been a supporter of public schools. Yeah, like you know, it, there's a lot of private schools here, but there was so much value in growing up in a public school, man, in Barnwell, just having different perspectives and people from different walks of life and different social economic back, like that. There's so much value in that. Um, so you've got a lot going on there, and it's good. But you just got to continue, just build on, which I know there's a lot of folks that's helping with that. So
So, based on your time at the state house, if there was an individual that wanted to make a difference, that was trying to advocate on behalf of rural South Carolina, Barnwell, Allendale, other places like that, what advice would you give them as far as the networking, how it really happens in Columbia?
question, man. Yeah, I think first understanding who the elected officials are in your area. That's both local, state, and federal. Learning who those folks are and trying to build relationships with those folks. And sometimes you can't have a direct access to them. So it's just learning who are the people that can connect you with them, and making sure that you're staying on their radar, right? And once you do that, that allows you to be able to get in the door. And then I think the most important part is understanding the process of how it works. Like, so for example, with the appropriations bill, it's a pretty complex bill, but there's a lot out there, and you can, I mean, all the stuff's streamed, so you can follow the process to really see how it works. But it's very difficult to really move the needle or make change if you don't understand what's happening at the state house or even just the players, right? And that takes an enormous amount of work, and it takes multiple people to do. But I think understanding the landscape first allows you to be able to go in and understand how you navigate it, which then leads to you being able to help with legislation or opposing legislation, but having a good understanding of the process, legislative process in general, it's so critical.
And
Um,
I think, and like you were saying earlier, I think pulling all, generally in the same direction is extremely important. And that's something that I've really been focused on my time on council here is locally. We're not going to agree on every issue. We're certainly going to have our differences, and that's understandable and to be expected. But at the same time, in general, we need to be pulling in the same direction and be speaking from one voice because we are a county of 20,000 people. And so when we do go to, our state senator represents, I think it was 6 or 7 counties now that Senator Hutto, represents. And so the reality is the voice, you do have a voice, but the voice is smaller. So you have to be more, you have to have more consensus on the voice that you are actually projecting. And so I think that's one thing that we're continuing to work on here locally, but is extremely important from a rural standpoint, being able to make sure that voice is consistent and concise so that they actually do know what the issues are. And you're not getting hit from, you know, 10 different people or 10 different topics, at the same time.
no, no, you're spot on, right? Because you know when you, when you're talking to these elected officials, particularly at the state house, they've got a million different things that folks are they're getting pulled in so many different ways. So to be able to communicate that message very clearly, and articulate exactly what you need, and make sure that again everybody's singing from the same tune, like that's important because the window can be small sometimes, right? Because they're going to do the next thing. I mean, you're in your role in county council, you know how that is.
Right.
So I think being able to be very clear, concise, and I think also understanding, you know, being able to explain how this truly impacts, the areas they represent, right? Because it's in their best interest to listen to folks that's helping them understand how they can make their districts better, their areas better. So I think approaching it from that position too, like here's what this is going to do for our county. Here's the needs here. Here's the areas we got to improve in. So being able to kind of lay that out, but tie it back to this is critical for the people you serve, always seems to resonate with the folks at the State House.
And I'm very thankful for a lot of the put. There has, I think, been a lot of recognition. You have your top 5, counties that everybody talks about: Greenville, Spartanburg, Lexington, Richland, Columbia, Dorchester, Berkeley, who are kind of your big power hitters there. But even those counties and the representatives from those counties, the more and more the years go by, the more I hear them talk about the fact that, and the more they're actually putting their money where their mouth is, supporting rural areas. And, whether it be the broadband or the rural stabilization fund, some of things coming down the pipeline, I think with the skip grant and some of the infrastructure money there, I think there's a lot of momentum for rural South Carolina. So I think it's important for Barnwell and Allendale to make sure that we are aligned to get our piece of that, pie that's coming to rural South Carolina, because there's a lot of attention being focused on rural areas. I can tell you that, as you know.
I agree, and that opportunity isn't there all the time, so you got to maximize on it. You just for an example, the work that Bonnie Amons is doing at rural infrastructure or at I think it's rural infrastructure, but
Yeah.
she's
All right.
handling
Yeah.
yeah, she's handling wastewater and so there's so much money that's available, but again, to your point, it's just finding ways to make sure that you can advocate for those resources, and I think you know Barnwell's doing a good job of that. There's always room for improvement, but I think learning again what those resources are and then having a strategy and plan to be able to access those resources.
Well, and I
Because
think
they,
it's also staying on top of, for example, we partnered with the city of Barnwell during this RIA, this SKIP grant, which is some of the ARPA money basically that the state appropriated for infrastructure, right? And so the county partnered with the city of Barnwell to run. It's going to end up being a $12.5 million sewer line from the city of Barnwell to Scat Park out near Snelling, which is going to be a huge deal. It doesn't, doesn't sound great as, sewer lines going in, but the reality is it'll be huge, 10, 20 years from now. But
yeah,
that work was done. It's great that our council was able to get it done, and the current city, council was able to get it done in the state. We took advantage of an opportunity, but there was work that was done well before I was on council by a lot of other people to get us in this position of being able to take advantage of that money now. And so for
right.
me, it's trying to know, try to stay ahead and recognize that vision of what is in the future, and then how do we try to get there, and what are we doing as a council and on the local level here, both in the county and all the municipalities, to set ourselves up for this, because people are wanting to. The reality is, people are wanting to fund shovel-ready projects. They don't want to hear about something that's going to have but you have to be working on these things constantly to take advantage of something that may happen 5 or 10 years down the road.
Yeah, and you're right. And I can tell you, in my time as a staffer in Ways and Means, I got a close look at, all the requests from state agencies and all the funding needs. And I can tell you, most of these requests are in there year after year. And you'll get to the point where 3, 4 years, they get the funding, right? But it's, you got to continuously stay on it and continue to drive that message home. And you can't get discouraged if it's not funded the first year, because you just got to continue to advocate for it. And that builds more credibility. The more that you can sell it, the more that you can get in front of elected officials to tell how important it is, the likely they're gonna fund it. But it takes sometimes years of that, of consistency and just being persistent, um, for some of that to matriculate.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things for me. I think our generation, and especially younger, it's, people call it the microwave generation or whatever you want to call it, but you want to get things done tomorrow, and I certainly do too. Coming from the business side, it's been one of the adjustments I think for me on the government side is, I want to make this decision today. I want it done tomorrow, but the reality is there is a process, and it does take time, and I think although that can be frustrating for a lot of citizens and myself included, a lot of times it's there's a reason, and it's for there is a process, and there's a reason there's a process, and so it's understanding that and trying to navigate that I think is important, moving forward as well. So talking about the vision as we close here, what's your vision of the future of, as we kind of cast this vision for Barnwell? If you could cast a vision, what would be that vision for the future of Barnwell, say 10, 20 years from now?
Yeah, good question, and it's something I think about often. Yeah, I think the big thing is, we need to create a place where families want to come, raise a family, safe, quality education, industry, parks, as you mentioned. You know, Barnwell is a special place, man, and I often credit Barnwell to where I'm at in life now. Obviously, you've got a long way to go, but growing up in Barnwell is special, and you know, I think we need to get to a point where, people want to come stay there, right? Because what's happening is you get people my age, your age. Fortunately, your Barnwell was able to get you back and Will back, but there's a lot of people that could do some amazing things that would just move away, right? And that's not because we wouldn't want to raise our kids in Barnwell. It's because, you know, the quality of life in some cases may not provide what a family is looking for. But I do have hope though that Barnwell will be there. And I can tell you, I'll never rule out moving back and moving back to Barnwell, man, because again, it's a place that it's helped me in life, and I've taken a lot of those values even in Mount Pleasant. So,
Yeah, it's a
you got to
great,
continue.
yeah, man. That's it. To me, it's a testament to you growing up in Barnwell, and the fact that I can tell just from the conversations that I've had just with different individuals that when you go somewhere, you take Barnwell with you, right? And I think that means a lot to me, and I'm sure I know everybody here that to still have you engaged and have somebody in your role that's really thinking about Barnwell and thinking about the future of Barnwell. So here's something that I close with every time. It's called the Realizing Rural 10. Okay, I really appreciate you. First of all, really appreciate you joining today. I know you're a busy man, and thanks for taking the time. We got 10 quick questions. You can answer them one sentence, one word, whatever you want to do, and just kind of give people a little deeper dive. Okay, so what is one thing that you love most about rural areas? How
Sense of
do you?
community.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's a great answer. How do you personally recharge and find inspiration in your daily life?
I usually recharge by going on the golf course, um, or spending a lot of time with my kids, man. Because yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, all the stuff that you do in a professional space is great, but being home with your kids and your family, that really recharges me and get me ready to go for the next day.
Yeah, I tell you, when I have a tough day at work and those girls are, and I'm like you, the girl dad, right? So then when those girls are standing at the door when I get home, man, it's one of my favorite. It probably is my favorite time of the day for sure. Oh, I think you already answered this probably, but what is your favorite outdoor activity or hobby?
My handicap doesn't support the amount of golf that I play, but I enjoy it, man. Just getting out, and I'll go out by myself and walk 18, and kind of helps me process things and think through things. So definitely golf.
Yeah, and I listened to one of my favorite podcasts to listen to is Trey Gowdy's podcast, and one of the things he talks about on there is he's a big avid golfer as well, and when you're on the golf course, you can't if you want to be good, you cannot think about anything else except for the shot that's in front of you. If you start thinking about what's going on at work or something else, checking your email, you have to be focused on. So it kind of is a good time for me, at least. I'm a big golfer as well, as you know. Clear your mind a little bit and focus on what's in front of you, because otherwise it'll go downhill quick, man.
And I would just add to that, Sweetwater is probably still one of my favorite courses. So that is a hidden gem. And every time I come to Barnwell, I make sure that I get out and play Sweetwater. So
Yeah, you got to get out. The greens I played yesterday. The greens are as good as they've ever been, I believe. So you'll have to get out and play next time you're here. What is one
yeah.
piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Um, don't be so hard on yourself. Enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, because every step along the way gives you some experience that you'll need down the road. So just take a moment to just, you know, enjoy where you are. Don't lose sight of the future, but don't beat yourself up too much.
What is your favorite movie or TV show and why?
Yeah, currently it's been Peppa Pig. That's been a good one. But
Good answer.
Bluey's a favorite too. So yeah, not much time for TV with three kids, man, and busy work. But yeah, I watch a lot of Golf Channel, but most of the time it's cartoons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is one misconception about rural life that you would like to dispel that maybe people down in Mount Pleasant don't understand about rural South Carolina?
Yeah. People don't understand the value that rural communities have. I mean, growing up in a rural community has truly shaped me, right, and molded me in everything I do. So, I think people just need to get down in rural counties and spend some time, and they'll quickly learn that it's a lot going on and it's a special place to grow up and visit.
We've talked about a lot today. What is out of all the stuff we talked about, what is one thing, if you had to pick one thing that you believe our community needs in order to thrive and grow in the future?
And we need like-minded people like yourself that has a vision, understands the vision, and persistent and fierce, and making sure that that vision is communicated to the people that can help make a difference.
This is a time where I want you to brag on yourself a little bit. So share something that your personal or professional accomplishment that you're most proud of.
Oh, I'll go personal, man. Just thing I'm most proud of is just being a good dad, man. You know, you know, for me, the girls and Maddox. I mean, nothing else matters when I'm with them, man. And it's just as hard as I'm working on being a good professional or advancing my career. Um, I want to make sure I'm doing just as much work with the little ones, molding them, man. And so that's probably what I'm most proud of, being a dad. Um, amongst you know, all the things in professional world, there's a lot there, but I think most important is being a dad and family man.
Yeah, that's one of the things I respect a lot about you. I think it's Nora, right? The one you got out there on the golf course. So I hope she takes after you in a lot of ways, but I hope she has a better golf swing than Dad. Okay.
I hope so. I hope so.
Is there a quote or a personal mantra that you live by or that you think about a lot?
And my mom taught this to me early on, man, and it's stuck with me for my whole life. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your title is, no matter it doesn't matter. It, never too important just to be kind to people, and I've always lived by that. No matter where I'm at in life, just be kind to people, and that's served me well, and has made my journey um, a lot less easier um, when you're just kind to people, man. So I live by that. At least I try to.
Yeah, man. Well, I tell you what, Mike, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here. You definitely 100% live by that, by all the interaction that I've had, both locally and across the state. You're very well respected,
Thank
both
you.
in your profession and personally as well. I think I can speak for everyone here in Barnwell County when we say how proud we are of you and everything that you're doing for the state of South Carolina and your family and everything. So just really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on here and look forward to seeing you again when you come back to Barnwell soon. Okay.
Hey, thank you, Dave. Thanks for inviting me, man. I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Talk soon. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right.